So it looks like Enzo Maresca is set to be named as the next manager of Chelsea Football Club. Fabrizio Romano has basically confirmed the talks are advancing. Sky Sports are saying the deal's very close. Kieran McKenna's no longer in the race. You know, there's a lot of news saying De Zerbi's no longer in the race and all of that. And it looks like Enzo Maresca will be the next manager of Chelsea, like 99% going to happen. It might not happen. It's Chelsea. Things can fall through. So in today's video, we're going to break down why Chelsea have gone for Enzo Maresca. We're first of all going to talk about Enzo Maresca, who he is, what he's done, you know, working with Pep, working with Leicester, his history. And then we're going to talk about his tactics and why Chelsea may go for his tactical approach, similarities to Guardiola, similarities to Arteta. And then we'll talk about why his tactics could apply really well to the Chelsea squad because they've got a lot of technical players and how potentially he could line up Chelsea with the current players they have and the potential signings that Chelsea could bring in. So please do hit that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. Now, I'm not a Chelsea fan. I'm not an Enzo Maresca expert, but I'm trying to look at this in the most unbiased analysis way to talk about this. So hopefully this video is informing for you guys. But as you can see on the screen, positive talks. He's keen. Looks like he's going to be next Chelsea manager. McKenna is off. Amorim isn't happening despite rumours. De Zerbi was rumoured for Chelsea, but apparently it's going to be Maresca. So let's start by talking about Enzo Maresca, because I tell you what, anyone that's worked under Pep, it seems to be loved in the managerial market. You know, Vinny Company getting the job at Bayern, obviously Arteta's gone to Arsenal. But what does Enzo Maresca have that I think makes him stand out above the likes of De Zerbi? Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I wouldn't have sat Poch if I was Chelsea, or we don't know if he was sat, maybe he walked. And Enzo Maresca personally wouldn't be my first choice. But looking at it from the most sort of logical perspective, I'm looking at the positives of it. There's definitely a few good reasons why this could be a good choice for Chelsea. Starting with his winning mentality, playing for Juventus, being a top midfielder. You know, Pep Guardiola, top midfielder turned into a coach. Xabi Alonso, top midfielder turned into a coach. There's sort of this thing of top midfielders and turning into top coaches, and he's got that winning mentality from working on Ancelotti. A lot of his principles were somewhat developed by Ancelotti, and obviously his time working with Guardiola. So Maresca worked under Pep Guardiola twice. First as the manager of elite development squad in 2021, where he led them to the Premier League 2 title, and then later he was then a member of the first team coaching staff under Pep Guardiola, and he got the Leicester job off the back of that. And some people thought it was a risk from Leicester. But what did he do? Got Leicester promoted. I mean, the beginning of the season as well, Leicester were just flying high. It looked like they were just going to get promoted so early. Playing good football, brought Leicester right back up, 97 points, won the championship. What can you say? And there was an emphasis on attacking and offensive football, a focus in possession, which has worked really well in the Premier League because it's what Pep does, because it's what Arteta does. And I think under Poch it's a bit more transitional. You look at Ten Hag, it's a bit more transitional. You look at Klopp, it's a bit more transitional. Those three teams have had a lot worse injuries than Arsenal, City this season as well. And I actually think a more possession-based where you let the ball do the work may also help Chelsea with their injury crisis, and we will talk about that. But he uses a mixture of a 4-3-3 and a 4-2-3-1 formation, but he does build up in a 3-2-4-1 shape, as far as I'm aware, based off the little bits that I've watched of him play and the analysis that I've done. But he likes his left back and right back, one of them to invert in midfield, and I think Chelsea have the players to do that. So let's talk about why Chelsea might be going for him and maybe similarities to Arteta and Pep, who right now are the two managers dominating the league. Well, it's a compact system with short passes, so players have to run less and have less space to cover. They let the ball do the work, and I think that's something that's worked really well in the Premier League. And I think Chelsea, they have a lot of good players. I feel like they brought loads of good individuals and haven't built a team, but I think they're turning into a team slowly, and they've got players that can let the ball do the work. And I think Cole Palmer, obviously former City player, Enzo Maresca, I think that could work really well. There's a lot of players at Chelsea that I think even Caicedo could work really well under Enzo Maresca. And also doing this provides them counter-attack cover and clear final third play. I think defensively, his Leicester side has been very good. They've let the ball do the work, but their rest defence is very good. And we spoke about Arsenal a lot this season and how Arsenal's rest defence has been so good and Arsenal's defensive record is so good. There's similar principles to his rest defence and Arteta's rest defence, in my opinion. And I generally think the style of play where you let the ball do the work and the players aren't running, chasing, transition, up, down, I think does cause less injuries. Now, obviously, at Leicester, he doesn't quite have the technical players that you'd have at Chelsea, and I actually think he's a manager that's probably better suited to a higher club, and I think he could enhance the team's performance, and he does follow basic Guardiola principles as well. and obviously we know about Guardiola, he's dominated the Premier League, Arteta's dominated the league, Company dominated the Championship. It was a bit of a flop in the Premier League. He's now got the job at Bayern Munich, so Bayern obviously see something in it. So I think with the right players and the right system, we know that Pep's students do very well. But he's not just brought in because he's a Pep student. Chelsea clearly like his way of play. Now, I'm not a tactician, I'm not an expert analysis, and I'm not an Enzo Maresca expert or anything like that. But from what I've seen and the research I've done, this is how I'd probably describe his style of play. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm then going to talk about how we could line up Chelsea and what this means in relation to Chelsea. But it looks like he aims to overload the midfield. He likes to isolate wingers one-on-one against fullbacks and defend transitions with 5 players. So the rest defence is good. I think Cole Palmer would definitely play more central, and he would rather have wider 1v1 wingers like Noni Madueke. Is also, if you look at Leicester, they rank first for possession per 90 and they have the second most touches under his management. Chelsea will be a very possession dominant side. They've got the players to do that. The focus is, of course, on dominating possession and playing passes to break down low blocks against deep defending teams. If you look at teams, how they defend against City, it's a low block, and they need technical players that are good on the ball to break down those low blocks, similar to City there. Now, interestingly, he uses an inverted right back to add to the midfield, creating a defensive shape of a 3-2-2-1, which is similar to Manchester City. I think Reece James could do that role quite well if he can stay fit. I think Chelsea are quite lucky because they've got Reece James and Malo Gusto, who are 2 solid right backs. Left back's a different conversation because Matson's your best player, but he's probably not coming back. Cucurella's been decent lately. Chilwell hasn't. I do think Colwill could be used there as well, because you could have one of them. You could have Reece James go into midfield and potentially Colwill come into a back 3. I think Colwill could work really well, actually. And what he does is he employs a deep build-up with short passes from the back line, involving the goalkeeper to create overloads. And it's a very slow, more patient style of build-up, more patient with the ball than it is under Poch. Poch is more like Klopp. Now, I'm not comparing Poch and Klopp, but if you compare Klopp and Pep, Pep is slower, more possession, breakdown play slower. Poch is, Klopp is, I want to move the ball quicker, transition. He's more like a Pep, whereas Poch is more like a Klopp. If you get what I'm saying, the style of play, there's very similar principles to Pep, but I'm not comparing him to Pep and I'm not comparing Poch to Klopp. I just feel like that was trying to break it down. So what I've noticed is the goalkeeper often joins the back line to facilitate play and counter pressing. I assume Petrovic will be number 1 keeper, but we'll have to see. And another thing I've noticed, and I think this is a very good thing, and this is something you need in the Premier League, you need to be an adaptable manager in the Premier League, but he doesn't seem to be afraid to change tactics mid-game. There's a lot of times where he's changed it up mid-game for Leicester, and I think you need to do that in the Premier League when things don't work. You look at Manchester United FA Cup final versus Man City, which we won. Boom, boom, boom. Pep noticed that Kovacic wasn't working. The winger situation wasn't working because Man United were defending out of possession really narrow, and they had Bernardo Silva and Foden as their wingers, who are narrow wingers. So Pep was like, that's not working. Pep obviously brings on Doku, who's a wide winger, and the only player that did anything for Man City was Doku. Maresca is very like that. He knows when to make changes. He knows when it's not working. If you look at how he plays, normally a 4-3-3, sometimes a bit of a 4-2-3-1, but sometimes he does a 3-4-3 formation with an inverted fullback. It almost lines up as a 4-3-3, but in possession goes into this 3-4-3 and to form a double pivot. One thing I've noticed about Caicedo is, I don't know if it's quite worked with Enzo Fernandez yet, and that's not to say it won't work, but I think if Cucurella's inverting next to Caicedo, or he's got someone there for support, Caicedo plays better, because I think Caicedo's second half of the season has been very good, and I think that could bring the best out of Caicedo. And of course, 63 or 64% possession as well, which is Chelsea going to be a very possession dominant side. And if you look at Chelsea, they have a good reputation with possession-based Italian managers. Sarri they won stuff under, Conte they won stuff under, Chelsea, Ancelotti as well. Chelsea, Italian possession-based managers. It seems to be a Chelsea thing. So he does tick a lot of Chelsea boxes. Again, not my first choice, but I'm not an expert on Maresca. But he does suit a lot of Chelsea boxes as well. So let's talk about other aspects of this style of play from things I've noticed. I've noticed as well, midfielders sort of track the 8 runs in the central midfield unit along with the inverted fullback to help dominate possession. I feel like they like to try and find 3 players in space to create dangerous chances, be patient with the ball, have a lot of the ball, and then once there is space, they like to move the ball and play it into space. It does definitely require highly technical players that are good under pressure, good under tight spaces, very similar to City, Foden, Bernardo Silva, but You've got Cole Palmer, you've got Moises Caicedo, it's a very technical player. Nicholas Jackson's quite a technical player. I do think Chelsea actually have the players to play good football. Just some of them haven't reached their potential yet, and they definitely need a couple more profiles as well. But his tactical approach at Leicester was very sort of dynamic formations, versatile build-up strategies, and defensive solidity, which has worked in the Premier League. And it was a good style of football as well. But I definitely think he's a manager that needs elite players to show what he's capable of, sort of like Pep, like Arteta. Arteta struggled in his first 2 seasons at Arsenal, came 8th twice because Arsenal didn't have good players. Now Arsenal have good technical players. Arteta is doing good stuff. Which brings me in how it may apply to Chelsea. Defensively, his team maintains shape with fullback in midfield until the ball is recovered, and then they like to counter-press with this 5-4 advantage in the middle. So potentially, Reece James could invert into midfield, forming a back three of Fofana, Badiashile, Colwill. I think Chalobah's been good for Chelsea, but I assume that he will leave, as being reported. I think Thiago Silva's gone, so this is the back line I'm going with. Personally, don't rate Disasi. Palmer will be in the midfield with probably Enzo in the half spaces, and then I think Noni, Madueke and Mudryk will hold the width with Sterling if he can get back in form. And that's why I think Palmer will definitely play more central in the system, and Jackson will lead the attack. I assume Chelsea will go for a winger. I don't know if Elise, they're going for Elise, but I do think they'd be better off going for Nico Williams in this kind of approach, because they've got Cole Palmer. They've got Jackson that can lead the attack. I think they'll probably go for a striker. I also assume they will go for another midfielder, another centre-back. I assume Chelsea will look at left-back, centre-back, midfielder, striker, winger as well. And I'd say Chelsea will probably line up like this. Right now, with assuming, Gallagher leaves, assuming Chalobah leaves, which is being reported, assuming the players that report to leave, this out of the current lineup, this is how I could see them lining up. Right now, I think there'll obviously be transfers, there'll obviously be changes, and you might say, well, that's quite similar to Poch, but the difference is the build-up will be a lot more slow and patient. It will be a lot more possession-based. So, I hope you like this video, which is a summary of why I think Chelsea are looking at Maresca. Again, not a tactical expert, not an expert on him. It's based off a few games I've watched and researched and what I've pointed out. Wouldn't be my first choice, but I do think with the right players, the right recruitment, if Chelsea do invest in a long-term project, which they said they would with Poch and Potter, which didn't happen, it can work. It can work. But I do think ultimately the biggest problem at Chelsea isn't the coach they employ. It's the people that are working above the coach that Chelsea need to fix out. They need to really back a coach, build a long-term project, have some patience, and spend properly and let the manager do what he wants. Because Poch didn't want Chalobah and Gallagher gone. They're going to sell Chalobah and Gallagher. Is he a yes man? Are they bringing in a yes man? Maybe that's what Chelsea want to do. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. I do think this can work well as long as the board sort themselves out and really give the guy the player he wants. Smash your like, smash the subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye.